I'll go off the Google Calendar. Jack, check it now.
Oh,
I'm here as the newly hired director of operations.
for which?
SAFB.
Ah,
Did you receive that email yesterday from Divya regarding?
Yes.
Okay.
okay, so they're pushing it to the next one, but you can have a seat right back there
All right.
in the gallery.
Over my nail is finally healing.
Yippee.
Did you break it?
Yeah, it's talking it.
Yeah,
I hear
the
Well, talk.
it.
You're unmuted.
What do you mean I'm here?
You're muted. Yeah, it was before Motor City Pride. I reached my hand into my hamper. My nail broke off and it slid underneath the rest of my nail underneath.
Hell.
Sounds
Yeah.
so.
Can you hear it?
That was one.
Oh,
Press the wrong. Nope, not that one.
There's Crestron.
Oh,
Jack.
Turn it
Yeah.
off.
Okay, it's good.
all right, now it's fine. Can I get out of this? Because I don't want to listen to myself more than once.
So good. Now there's no more music.
I'll mention it today.
Hmm.
You'll see.
Oh. Just to let you know how the air will be probably starting in about hopefully 5:05. Just for the people online, we'll be starting in about 3 to 4 minutes. Nia, I'm gonna ask you to just start the meeting, but then you can yield your role as chair right after that, all right?
So, if it's to tell the Senate to make, like, incite.
All right, Nia, you are free to start the meeting now.
All right. I relinquish my chairing responsibility to the speaker of the legislature for this meeting.
For the sake of everybody who couldn't hear that, she said she yields the role as chair to the leader. I was just letting you know. Okay.
You can move the microphone closer.
Okay. Oh, in any case, I call this meeting to order at 5:04 p.m. First up, we'll head into roll call. When you hear your name, say if you're present or present in voting. I'll be marking myself as absent, yield my voting rights for this meeting as chair. Majority Leader Brummer. Chairperson LaBelle.
Present voting.
Chairperson Valdez will be late. Chairperson Waters.
President voting.
Parliamentarian Vella.
Present.
Legislator Barris will be late. Legislator Childs. Okay. Legislator Jeswicki.
Present.
Legislator Fayette.
President voting.
Legislator Aveza.
Present.
Legislator Lehman Pace.
Present.
Legislator Lunger.
Excuse.
Legislator Maku.
Present.
Legislator Markowitz. Legislator Martino. He
It's gonna be like that.
stepped out of the room. All right. Legislator Mays.
Excuse.
Legislator Mason. Legislator Nickel. Okay. Legislator Obra.
Present.
Legislator Prishindaro.
Present.
Legislator Rosario.
Present.
Legislator Serbu.
Present.
Legislator Smith. Legislator Snell.
President voting.
Legislator Van Patten.
President.
Legislator Wiegand, Legislator Wolf. All right, and with that, we hit quorum. Actually, Legislator Barris, are you present and present voting? All right, moving past roll call, move into our land acknowledgement. Further, we recognize the wrongs done to those forcibly removed from their homelands and commit to fostering an environment of inclusion that is responsive to the needs of First Peoples through our words, policies, and actions. Next up, we'll move into the approval of meeting minutes from 5/28. Is there any discussion on the approval of meeting minutes 5/28 this time? Oh, okay. You need me to scroll through? Okay.
Grab this cool thing.
Yeah.
A little bit smaller.
Okay. All right, is there any discussion on the meeting minutes from 5/28 at this time? Seeing none, we'll be moving into a roll call vote. Voice vote. Are there any nays or any yays at this, sorry, any nays at this time? Any yays?
Yay.
All right, with that, the meeting minutes have been passed. All right, with that, we'll be moving into the approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda at this time? Seeing none, we'll be moving into a voice vote. Are there any nays at this time? Any yays?
Yay.
All right, with that, the agenda has been passed. That we'll be moving into our guest speaker, which we have none. And with that, we'll be moving into announcements. Are there any announcements at this time? Also seeing none, we'll be moving on into old business. First in old business is CB 6801. This is presented by Chairperson LaBelle. Chairperson LaBelle, you have the floor.
I'm stealing this one. All right, so this is the same thing I presented at the last meeting. Thank you, President Johnson, for the confused face. I was hoping for that one. This is the bill I created a while ago to create an ad hoc committee specifically addressing issues related to the LGBTQ plus community. If you could scroll down to the enacted section. Thank you, thank you. This has not changed since the first time it has been read. This just creates the committee so I can then go on, create the guidelines and, run the committee to address issues related to the community. This is supposed to be sound like a public forum rather than a typical committee because I think that that will just work better. Yeah, any questions?
Is there any discussion on CB 6801 at this time? Legislator Lehman Pace.
Just, sorry.
There we go.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. So, this repeatedly happens. I sound like a Joe Biden soda thing whenever I use these. But I did want to ask, just because I didn't notice it in last week's discussion when reading over the minutes, just for posterity's sake, what I guess is the purpose of creating this committee rather than facilitating it through the Director of Student Advocacy when that's eventually hired? Just so the record reflects.
So we can organize it right now and get the guidelines made, because if we are to wait until the Director of Student Advocacy is created, we would then have to wait even longer to make this committee. And of course, it's supposed to be more legislative focused rather than towards the executive, I believe. President Johnson has something to say about that as well.
President Johnson.
Okay, the 2 cents I will offer on this one at least is when it comes to creating these committees, I remember talking to Chairperson Smith about this. Something that felt important in doing so is also offering the public the opportunity to do so. And at times, the public is more suited to engage with the legislature as opposed to just the executive. I am certain that when I hire a student advocacy director, they will probably ask to be in some form of involved in any ad hoc committees we create in the area. But for the sake of allowing the public to stay involved, I can support having the legislature focus on overseeing it simply because it's the legislature's responsibility to be representative of the public. With that, I will yield. I will yield back to Chairperson Lavelle.
Legislator Layman Pace.
Then just two more, sorry. One, I did want to say, I noticed there was something brought up last week where none of the campus LGBTQ organizations signed on to this. I know they, from reading the minutes, they'd heard about it. I just was wondering if there was any update on that or anything. If they're not, I mean, I know that they approved this, they just haven't put their names on it.
Yes, I said I was going to reach out to them and try and get their names on it. However, I completely forgot about it. Because I've been very busy the past week. Yes, they do approve of this. I talked with both the SAGE president and the graduate assistant of the Gender and Sexuality Center. They approve, they like it.
Sweet.
Just their names aren't on here.
And then I guess for my final one, it was, I noticed that there is there's a paragraph about the membership. I guess, do we have any, how big do we want this committee? I guess I know President Johnson brought up trying to help interface with members of the public, which is, I know that's something that's done through General Assembly. So I'm also wondering if maybe General Assembly might be the forum for this, if we're trying to include more public facing members of the body and non-members of the body.
So
I apologize, I'll cut you off really quick. Point of information offered by Legislator Snell. Please speak a little bit louder into the microphones. Online is having trouble hearing.
So the membership section of the bill is to essentially just specify that it has no membership limit, because I want it to be like a forum, so as many people as possible from the public can just show up. It's meant to be run more like a campus food committee. And regarding this possibly be like going through General Assembly, General Assembly is inactive and doesn't really work at the moment. So in order to make it as effective as it could be, it's an ad hoc committee rather than that.
Is there any other discussion on CB 6801 at this time? All right, prior to voting, I see a present in the chat from Chairperson Valdez. All right, with that, we'll move into a roll call vote. Chairperson LaBelle.
Yay.
Chairperson Waters.
Yay.
Legislator Freyetete.
Yay.
Legislator Snell.
Yay.
Chairperson Valdez.
Yay.
Parliamentarian Vella.
Yay.
Legislator Barris. Legislator Jeswicki. Legislator Aveza.
Yay.
Legislator Layman Pace.
Yay.
Legislator Maku.
Yay.
Legislator Obra.
Yay.
Legislator Prashandaro.
Yay.
Legislator Rosario.
Yay.
Legislator Serbu.
Yay.
Legislator Van Patten.
Yay.
Legislator Wiegand. Legislator Wolf. All right, and with that, CB 6801 has passed. Moving on the agenda, we'll be moving into new business. First on new business is the approval of LJ Lasecki for Director of Internal Affairs. This is presented by Vice President Matthews. Vice President Matthews, you have the floor.
Thank you, and excuse the slightly noisy background. I'm at a graduation. But I will be presenting LJ Lasecki for Director of Internal Affairs. And I really just give them the floor. And if you guys have any questions, you guys feel free to ask them.
Madam Chair, am I recognized?
Yes, you are recognized.
Good afternoon, legislators. My name is LJ Lasecki. I'm currently serving as the Interim Director of Internal Affairs, and I'm of course up here for permanent approval to this position for the Johnson Matthews administration. I think my qualifications for this role speak for themselves. My once primary, now shared job involves, among other things, tracking and reporting the proceedings of public bodies and boards of directors, from city council, public agency boards, all the way up to the state legislature, and organizing documents that relate to the proceedings of those bodies, which make me a natural fit for the administrative duties of this role as Director of Internal Affairs. So far in my role in the interim capacity, I prepared the minutes from the last general body meeting that this body approved minutes ago. I developed and began to implement a detailed inventory tracking and control system for Student Congress resources where none previously existed, from what I was able to tell, which when fully implemented will allow every member of Congress to better understand the state of our resources, where they can be found, and when they should and should not be reordered. Because I know that was a recurring problem where people didn't know where, for example, t-shirts and sweatshirts were, and they decided to just order more. That piled up, and in creating and implementing this inventory, I discovered that Congress has in possession over 1,000 t-shirts and sweatshirts. And that sort of plays into the decluttering of the office that I've begun to implement. Getting some of the empty boxes that were left in the office recycled, some old, like years old literature that was lying around is now gone. Cleaned up some of the meeting supplies. That's the reason that the flags are now housed in mugs rather than just being tossed into the basket there. In the meantime, I also fixed 2 pieces of office furniture that had been in a state of disrepair and added a new sign to the front of the office communicating to the student body when meetings would be held. If I'm approved for this role, I'd like to continue implementing that inventory tracking system and determine how legislators and executive staff will be able to easily interact with it, both understanding and easily updating our understanding of the current state of Student Congress's resources. I'd like to develop and implement a style guide to make sure that Student Congress's communications are professional and consistent, and of course follow WCAG and all other applicable accessibility standards. I'd like to develop a formal policy on the use of preferred names in Student Congress and in all of our communications, and to contribute to the President's ongoing reforms of various policies across the board in Student Congress. I believe all of that shows that I'm the most qualified candidate for this position, but I'm eager to hear your questions and look forward to your decision. Thank you.
Are there any questions for LJ Lasecki at this time? Legislator Layman Pace.
I did want to first say that you have presented immense qualifications. However, given your background and some of the details that you provided, I'm wondering why maybe you went for Director of Internal Affairs rather than Director of the Executive Platform. As you know, I was the holder of that I did all the political duties for it for basically 2 years. And I know what a good executive platform director looks like, and I think that you would be a far better fit for that than the internal affairs director, especially considering I know you brought up the shirts and you said in the past we had just ordered more because we didn't know how many we had. That wasn't true, actually. We ordered more because we wanted different designs. That was done by the Faruqi Ferguson administration. Additionally, I do want to make sure that some of the literature that you mentioned you got rid of in the office, that we have an archived copy of. I know we had some documents we only had physical copies of that weren't backed up in the library. So I want to make sure that we're keeping everything documented. But I guess my principal question is why this one and not executive platform?
Thank you, Legislator Layman Pace. To begin, with regard to those old documents, for one, yes, I did keep archived copies of all of them. I think it's very important to maintain that historical record wherever possible. Some of these in question were for events that happened over 2 years ago, and I didn't really believe were necessary to continue keeping around the office. And I apologize for the confusion about the reason for ordering more t-shirts. That was the reason that I was told, but then again, I wasn't there, so I definitely could have made mistakes in my secondhand recollection.
Legislator Snell. Oh, sorry, I apologize.
Now to address your addressing of my qualifications. I believe that the qualifications that I've addressed, specifically my experience with creating and managing records of the proceedings of public bodies, not unlike Student Congress, does make me uniquely qualified for this position. I can see your point about how some of my skills would be applicable to the job of Director of Executive Platform, but I stand by my qualifications and how they apply to this position.
Now, Legislator Snell.
So you came into this organization being close friends with Marcus Johnson. To my understanding, he had nothing to do with your approval process interviews. Thank you. Apologies for that. Just to confirm, yes, that is true.
Hi, I can confirm this as I was the one who conducted the interviews.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, Vice President Matthews, you do not have the floor at the moment.
And aren't I the one presenting this?
No, not me.
You have to be recognized by the chair. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
LJ, you have the floor.
Thank you. Legislator Snell, that is correct to the best of my understanding. I, of course, was not personally involved in my own hiring, so I can't speak to everything that was done behind the scenes, but I am not aware of any involvement that the president had in that process.
Thank you. That answers the
I
question.
think Vice President Matthews, who was present, could better speak to that, though.
Chairperson Waters.
Yeah, I just have a question that kind of builds off of Legislator Leonard Pace's question that I was so curious about. You say that you have work with other bodies similar to Student Congress. If you could be so kind, could you tell me what those bodies were?
They varied, like I mentioned, from both local city councils, such as covering in many suburbs of Detroit, including East Point and Farmington Hills. When issues relevant to my organization were present, I was there to collect the data on those. I frequently attend the meetings of the boards of directors of public transit agencies such as SMART and the Detroit Transportation Corporation, as well as Detroit City Council, which oversees a lot of Detroit's public transit operations, as well as the Michigan legislature when relevant bills and committees are relevant to my work. I attend those as well and have gained a pretty complete understanding of the variations in procedures between those bodies and what best practices are followed by those bodies and how they can be applied to Student Congress. Does that answer your satisfaction, Chair?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
President Johnson.
I was gonna say, to add to Legislator Snell's point, I very adamantly did not participate in the hiring of LJ on this one. I asked Advisor Miller, actually, she's not here at the moment, I think she's upstairs tabling. I asked her and Vice President Matthews to oversee the selection process for this position because LJ and I did know each other outside of Congress, and I didn't want to present any conflict of interest in selection. I'll yield the floor now.
Chairperson Waters.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question to President Johnson, and that is, I would like to ask, just for my own curiosity, were there any other candidates, just as or was it us one horse race?
So to my understanding,
I apologize. The question is out of order, Chairperson Waters.
never mind.
Are there any other questions for LJ Lisicki at this time? Seeing none, LJ, I'm going to ask you to leave the room so we can enter discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there any discussion on the approval of LJ Losecki at this time? Legislator Layman Pace.
I do again really want to stress that I think LJ does have a place in this administration. I just really do not think that this is the role for them. I recognize that they're good at keeping inventory, but every single other detail that they provided about their career experience, everything that I know from them, from seeing them at Detroit DSA meetings or tabling at rides on behalf of transit groups, I really just, I believe firmly that they would be a lot they would serve this Congress better as the director of the executive platform, especially given historically, the director of the executive platform handles anything that the president needs done and is usually a close confidant of the president. And even obscuring the personal relationship between LJ and President Johnson, they seem very competent and trustworthy, and I think that their talents would be better suited towards the executive platform because that has historically been the person who's helped deal with transit, or the person who's dealt with our political advocacy, or the person who is organized events or gone to meetings, governmental meetings and things. I mean, I was basically our point person for the government relations office, which seems something that's right up LJ's alley. So I guess I would be a nay on this because I don't think this is the right position for LJ. But I do think that LJ would be fantastic as an executive platform director. Thank you.
Legislator Snell.
I would like to counter legislator Layman Pace for the simple fact that, for starters, we can't just vote people for what we think they want. This is something we've already gone over before in previous meetings with approvals. The LJ Losecki is going up for Director of Internal Affairs. If you want to vote nay on them for that, that's fine. But you cannot just vote nay because, oh, well, they'd be better fit for this other role because they didn't apply for the other role. Second of all, their job record speaks for itself. If they've done the job before and they've been handling the job literally up until this point in interim, why should we vote nay on them?
Chairperson Waters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to second what legislator Layman Pace has stated. I personally believe that although, yes, LJ is a very qualified candidate, I believe their qualifications would be better for the director of executive platform. And I mean, I would like to also comment a little bit on what legislator Snell said. And I do believe that, like, if we believe that they're not the best fit, we can vote nay on them for that reason. You can vote nay for any reason. With that, I yield the floor.
Chairperson LaBelle.
Thank you very much. So first I wanted to just echo a lot of the sentiments from Community Support Chair and Community Support Chair Waters and Legislator Layman Pace. I'm not going to restate it because that's useless, but I echo their sentiments. And I would like to raise up a different point of I believe LJ's qualifications are great. I do personally think they would be better for executive platform. However, on a different note, I believe with personal experience with LJ, I believe that their interpersonal skills are rather lacking in for the Director of Internal Affairs job. Our past two DIAs have been very, very experienced when it comes to social interaction and just very experienced when it comes to maintaining interpersonal communications with other organizations and organizing things such as that. I believe LJ just lacks the skill or know-how to do that. I very much, because of that, think they are a better for the Director of Executive Platform. With that, I yield the floor.
Legislator Wolf.
Hello? Okay, sorry, I forgot. Okay. First off, I do think that I think it is, you know, more constructive to speak in the positive for why someone may not be a good role for, you know, and I believe that's what many legislators here are trying to do, speak in the positive of why it would be better for them to fulfill a different role. And I don't mean to like, I do not like to speak negatively of people or, try and, like, I really don't want to like see people, like fail to succeed in something they're trying, very hard and very passionately about. But as a gallery member at the election commission's hearing, which I feel that I should probably comment upon as someone who was not part of a commission and did not have a professional stake in the hearings. I do not think Lazeki, I don't think he was very cool-headed or very communicative or understanding of other people's perspectives. And I think the director of internal affairs really needs to be the medium between legislators and our space in the office and our supplies and how our space is used and various other duties. And I think that I can't see them being a very good, like medium between legislators and our space and how it's used and our supplies and how everything is organized. If they seem quite hot-headed and unyielding, which I don't think is necessarily, poor qualities across the board. I just think in this particular scope for like the director of internal affairs, being, really strong-willed and uncompromising really isn't, most desirable.
Vice President Matthews.
Hi, I would just ask the person who was like in charge of this hiring process. We only had 6 applicants who applied for this position. I just want y'all to know that. Also, out of the 6, 4, we decided not to go forward with the interviews because they were mass applying to a lot of jobs and their resumes and cover letters were very lacking. And then the 2 that we decided to move forward with, 1 didn't respond, so we could not conduct an interview as they did not respond. So LJ is literally the only person who had the qualifications and who responded to set up an interview. If there were other candidates, we would have a more broad pool. So I just want you guys to know, if you guys were to vote nay, the applicants and the candidates for this position are very limited.
Legislator Fayette.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of make a comment about my experience in the elections committee and kind of my first experience directly working with Ajay Lazeki. During this meeting, while it was very clear that they did have the qualifications to do that job at the time as a representative to the Johnson Matthews slate. I did notice during the hearing and throughout the entire meeting that unfortunately they seem to get really irritated, visually irritated. And when it comes to working with other members, especially our legislature, it is not good to have someone that gets that easily irritated at the people doing their jobs, especially at personally me, at the time elections committee member. It's not good for efficiency, does not look good. It's not good for teamwork, which unfortunately, that's what we all do here. So I would heavily suggest looking at another candidate for this position. And with that, I yield.
Legislator Layman Pace.
There we go. I want to reiterate a little bit what Chairperson LaBelle said about the importance, and honestly, what a lot of members seem to have concerns with, about the importance of having a good front face for the organization. The Director of Internal Affairs desk is right at the front of the office. You can see it from the outside. I mean, Taylor, our Director Richardson, our previous director, had signs on her desk that said DIA's desk. Don't like, she didn't want people to sit there if they didn't have to, because you are the face of the organization, literally, you are the face of the organization. You are the first person that people see when they want to go in the Student Congress office. And honestly, in that capacity, you can't really have a bad day. You can't really be frustrated if you were the greeter. I mean, that's a skill that we get. And perhaps, I mean, I know Vice President Matthews brought up we didn't have any qualified applicants. Perhaps we ought to reach out to certain faculty members or departments to send out emails about this. Maybe it's a failure of the hiring process. I know in the past this has been an issue where it's like, wow, we don't have a lot of people applying for things. What are we doing? Putting it on Handshake and Instagram. And that's not an indictment of anyone in this administration. That's an indictment of student Congress in general. We're not great at advertising. But I think that perhaps if we cast a wider net and focused a bit more on, we have a robust HR program. We have a great communications department. We have people on this campus who are qualified and know what they're doing and can be a good front face to our organization. Additionally, I guess I want to corroborate. And actually, I want to give interim director Lizecki a little bit of grace. Everyone's tensions ran high in the elections. It was a lot, you know, it was a competitive race. I think it was what, 20 votes that decided the winner? It was close. Everybody was a little frustrated. So I'm willing to give some grace with that. But if what I'm hearing is true about some of the other concerns that interim director Lizecki has done in their capacity as the director of internal affairs, I am even less confident in voting for them for this. But again, I guess to bring up what Legislator Snell said, we can't vote no because we think they're good for another position. We can, and frankly, we can encourage them, hey, you would be better for this. That's why I brought it up to them. And if they don't go for it, fine. We can find someone else who is disqualified. But as it stands, I don't think they would be a good director of internal affairs. And I have not really been presented a good reason why they could be other than some on-paper stuff. Thank you,
Legislator Snell.
I just want to point out that as someone who is, if everyone is not aware, LJ is also a friend of mine. So I admit I am a bit biased. However, I find it quite odd that a lot of people who have been speaking to their interpersonal skills are people who they admittedly do not regularly interact with in any capacity. I find it quite odd that this is the benchmark we are using for their interpersonal skills, taking a very stressful situation for everyone and holding that against them as if that is their full defining trait. Especially when you did not speak to them before said event. You did not speak to them after. That should not be what determines how you view someone, especially in such an important role. One that they have shown literally through working the role as is, that they are capable of handling. And I find it very disappointing that that is the benchmark we are stooping to, because by that logic, there's a lot of people in this room who, yes, we should be taking a double look at then. And with that, I yield.
Chairperson LaBelle.
Thank you. I was debating on bringing up any experience relating to the elections committee because I did have a professional stake in that. But seeing as other people have mentioned it, I'm going to mention my experience with that. Just speaking how being as hot-headed as they may be at times is not good for the role. After that, just for the record, that hearing did not go their way. And after the hearing, they followed me down the hall and yelled, "I hope you're happy now," over and over again. And that wasn't a very good experience. And a lot of the points I wanted to bring up with this regarding the just being the face of the office, be sitting at the front and addressing every single person who goes in there to ask questions. I just don't believe they're a good fit. And I would very much, again, rather see them go for director of executive platform. That I yield the floor. Thank you.
Vice President Matthews.
Hi, I just wanted to comment on Legislator Layman Pace's point that we did send out emails regarding this position, 2 mass emails, in fact. So this position had proper advertising, in my opinion, as well as the fact that, speaking to their personal and like personality wise, I have interacted with LJ on a regular basis. And I have seen the way that they have conducted themselves in the office. And so far, so good. I haven't seen any issues and I haven't seen anything to be worrisome about so far. And if the time comes when there is issues regarding their job and their role and how they're conducting themselves, then that can be brought up then. But so far, there have not been any issues that I have known.
All right, we have run out on our discussion timer unless there's a motion to add more time.
Motion for, an extra 10 minutes debate.
Motion for extra 10 minutes debate by Chairperson LaBelle. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Legislator Fayette. Legislator Wolf, you have the floor.
After seeing, being in the gallery witnessing that, those proceedings with the election commission, after seeing, the election commission, handle things, very professionally and very, very calm and collected, especially, Director Richardson was clear, it was a very tense situation, and you could tell that, Director Richardson wasn't exactly, happy about the situation, but she really stayed professional, kept it short, and, really kept things moving. And considering that, Director Richardson was the Director of Internal Affairs at the time, I imagine the roles reversed. I don't think the proceedings would have gone, as successfully. I
Let-
yield the floor.
Legislator Fayette.
So, I just wanted to kind of make the statement that you're obviously hearing very two different observations of Lizaki, and I would like to point out that it seems like the people who talk to them the most are the ones at the forefront for their candidacy. However, when it comes to the Director of Internal Affairs and communicating with people that they don't know on a daily basis, as well as people they know on a daily basis, it is incredibly important that we have someone who's amicable to anybody that walks into the office. And it seems like the people that have talked to them the least or not as often have most critical views and the worst experiences. And I think we really need to look at that and observe that and vote based on that. And with that, I yield.
Legislator Markowitz.
So,
Oh, yeah, for the record, there's a speaker right above you, and if you point it towards that, it will pick it up.
Down. Further down. Okay. For the record, I'll be voting abstain on this one just because it was cutting out a lot, so I couldn't really hear a lot about what the candidate was saying with their speech. So with that being said, I think I come from a pretty neutral standpoint that I've just heard the debate pretty much. And if there are questions raised that somebody has a hard time staying cool when there are stressful situations, we have seen that the office sometimes has stressful situations if people are coming in distress or whatnot. And so putting somebody that has a track record of not staying cool, I don't think is a good idea.
Legislator Snell.
I just want to keep pointing out again, while yes, I believe it was Mario or Legislator Prashandaro, apologies again, please speak into the mic. Online cannot hear you if you don't. With that said, while I recognize that yes, it may look like, oh, the people who have interacted with them the most obviously have the best to say about them. However, I would like to emphasize again, the people who spoke with them the least were also under stress. And more importantly, we're going through the same stressful situation. That is not how they consistently operate under stress. We have seen them working at the job as it stands now. I believe that alone makes them a great candidate. And the fact that we keep bringing up interpersonal records and more importantly, citing Director Richardson, who I would like to point out is not here. Director Richardson no longer works for Oakland University Student Congress. Her words mean nothing to this discussion at the moment. Not because I recognize why it seems important, seeing as she was here for the election season. She was election commissioner. However, everyone can admit they don't act the same during election season because it is so intensely stressful. That is the period where you determine whether or not you are even hired to OUSC. And if you are not, there is not always the potential for you to run again, as we saw with terms like this, where all 28 seats were filled, meaning the people who didn't get it were not able to run again right away. As such, I feel that if we keep holding election season against them, then we all need to hold ourselves to the same standards, and we should again be looking at who was acting what way during the election season and determine if they should be holding the positions that they hold. With that, I yield.
Chairperson Waters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say one quick thing. The reason we keep bringing up former Director Richardson is because former Director Richardson did an amazing job. And I feel that what Director Richardson, how she held herself and the conduct she held herself was of top tier and should be a model for any future DIA. With that, I want to point out that I would personally like to invite LJ Lasecki to run for the executive platform if they are not approved for the DIA. I would like to personally do that. With that, I yield the floor.
President Johnson.
Well, it is always fun hearing what everyone wants of my board from me. I guess the only main things I will stress, because it is not just one position that this comes in with, we have to, well, the first question I would ask is, removing any personal feelings people have about whatever so-and-so did during elections, because quite frankly, if I hire people based on who looks visibly frustrated, half this room should resign right now. But secondly, I want to know from you all, in the time that they've held the position, not how you feel about them beforehand, any of that, since they've held it, are there any major complaints from you all that are making you hesitant about letting them continue in the position? Because everything I'm hearing that people are afraid, well, they won't be good at doing this, they won't be good at that, they've been doing it. So are we concerned that how they've been doing it so far and how they might continue doing it going forward, is that where a lot of this concern is coming from? Because if so, I'm trying to avoid commenting too much, because like I said, I adamantly was removed from this process. But I guess that's where my question is coming from. Since they've held the position, because I've not heard much about since they've taken on the job, it's more about how people have felt about them before they took on the job. So since they've taken it on, is this where all of these concerns are coming from? And I will also have to echo the point that Vice President Matthews made, that when it came to all of these positions, we did email department chairs and we blasted it out to as many people as we could. And these are the candidates we got. So, I mean, we can try again if y'all really, really want us to, but I don't, how can I word this? As the one who has to actually do that, I don't think that is going to end up the way you were hoping it will, because I'm almost certain I am not going to get another Taylor Richardson applying for this position. So I guess my question stems from, since they've taken on the position, or is that where these concerns are coming from? And that's where I will yield my time.
Legislator Wakin, did you still have a point? Okay. Legislator Fayette.
Yeah, I'll take the time to respond to the president. I do think what a lot of us are thinking, and I could be wrong because obviously I'm speaking from my own observation. A lot of us are looking at the past to see what the future will be like. As you have already stated, they have been doing their job. However, it's only been 3 weeks because that's the time period that you were given to kind of have them do their job without us voting on it yet. And while I do think those 3 weeks can speak for themselves, I think we're trying to look for more. And where do we go when we're trying to find more? We look at the past. We look for examples, we look for precedents, We're looking for what we want to see in this position. And from what I'm hearing, a lot of us don't see it. And that's why we are voicing our opinions in the way that we are today. And with that, I yield.
Vice President Matthews.
Hi, I would just like to comment on the point of where that, you know, you guys keep talking about Director Richardson, and yes, I love her as a person. She's a great person. However, as DIA, she is friendly, she is approachable. However, she was not a perfect DIA. She did not do the job perfectly. There was times where she couldn't complete the meeting minutes. There was times where she couldn't effectively do her job because she was elected commissioner. And so I would just like to point out that you guys are holding Taylor or Director Richardson on a pedestal because you love her. And like I said, she's a great person, but she was not a flawless DIA. There were times and places where she lacked and where I think personally, LJ can excel in.
All right. Once again, discussion time has expired unless there are any motions to add more time. Legislator Lehman Pace.
Great, Director.
Motion to extend discussion by 3 minutes proposed by Legislator Lehman Pace. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Chairperson LaBelle. Legislator Snell, you have the floor.
I also want to point out, Legislator Fayetteville, you pointed out that you need to look to the past to define the future. That would work. However, a vast majority of people in both the room, on Zoom, in Congress in general, we're not only not there to witness that past, but also, again, we're taking it back to, with that comment about looking to the past to define the future, going back to that interpersonal skills, that stress management skills. You haven't spoken to Interim Director Lisecki. We cannot hold someone's past against them when we were not there to witness it. You cannot hold someone to your first impression if you've never spoken to them. What you're holding them to is whatever you've heard from the voices you trust the most, which is, again, your prerogative, but that's not what we vote on. If you are voting from a personal experience, fine. If you are voting because you truly and wholeheartedly in your heart can look at the work they've done, can look at their record, can look at all of that they are currently doing, can look at the ways that they are trying to improve, and wholeheartedly say with 110% certainty, they are not only not good for this job, but they should go to this other job and we can find someone better, fine. I cannot change your vote on that. But what I can say is you cannot hold someone to a past you did not see. You cannot hold someone to an interpersonal relationship you did not have. You do not get, that is completely unreasonable. By that logic, we should all be holding each other to past that we did not see. We should all be holding each other to interpersonal relationships that we do not have. You can cast someone to a role if they don't want to play it. That is their prerogative and you cannot force it. Vice President Matthews and President Johnson have come to us and said this is their best fit. They have emphasized throughout this entire meeting something they think we're overlooking, the fact that they don't have anyone else. We're not going to, and having been in personal experience, we're not going to find someone as qualified as Interim Director Lisecki is. It's not possible. So you can pass on them, and that is your prerogative, but do that with the expectation that you will not get someone like them. Because we're not going to get another Taylor. We're not going to get another Director Lisecki. We're not getting another one of these people. With that, I yield.
Legislator Martino.
Looking at this, with only Lisecki on there, do we have any other options? Were any other options mentioned while I was out? Does anyone else want this role? Because that's the big question. If it's not Lisecki, who wants it? And that person is going to have to show the same way that Lisecki is going to have to show that they can do the job. Lisecki has shown he can do the job in the 3 meetings we've had.
I'm not aware of the previous outbursts, but in the times that I have talked to him, he has been amicable. I'm going to vote yes.
All right, discussion time has once again expired unless there is a motion to extend. Motion to extend by 2 minutes is, do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Legislator Pershandaro. Legislator Van Patten, you have the floor.
Thank you. I guess I'm more of a neutral ground in this because I only met LJ over these past few weeks, and I think it is completely valid to use one's past experience in making informed decisions about people and who you appoint into positions. From my experience with LJ, I will say it has always been amicable. So if there are concerns about LJ not being able to like be the face of the organization, I think most people are ultimately amicable to strangers, and I think LJ fits in that category. However, I am unaware of any other stressful situations that might arise. I will be abstaining for this reason, as I'm only using like information that I've been given by the rest of the legislators here. So although I'm neutral ground, like I have to use what's being given to me in the moment to make such decisions.
President Johnson.
Something I will communicate as far as going forward when it comes to hirings is that if you have these concerns, you should share them with the speaker, because I include the speaker in these conversations at times. I get her input and I ask her what are some concerns that she's had or heard when it comes to these positions. And when I talked to her about this one in particular, I don't think she was aware that so many people had concerns about a previous engagement they had with them at a meeting back in, what, April, I believe. So if you have concerns, you should share them with Speaker DeVore, because she's even noted that of all the candidates who applied for the position, that LJ was the most qualified person to choose. So I will just point that out there. And again, as the person who has to find what you all are looking for, just remember something I've had to come to terms with: all your boxes are not going to get checked. So you're going to have to find whatever quality, all the qualities you want in a DIA, and find which ones you're willing to let go of, because you might get 3 or 4 people that check a few boxes, but you're not going to find that one perfect person that gets them all. So I will leave you all with that note.
All right, and once again, discussion timer has expired. Is there any motion to extend that discussion? Seeing none, we'll be moving into a roll call vote. Starting with Chairperson LaBelle.
Nay.
Chairperson Waters.
Nay.
Legislator Freyetete.
Nay.
I'm gonna pause voting really quick. Legislator Markowitz, were you present or present in voting? And Legislator Martino, are you present or present in voting? Legislator Snell.
Yay.
Chairperson Valdez.
Abstain.
Parliamentarian Villa.
Abstain.
Legislator Barris. Legislator Jeswicki. Legislator Aveza.
Abstain.
Legislator Lehman Pace. Legislator Maku.
Can you come back to me?
Legislator Markowitz.
Abstain.
Legislator Obra.
Abstain.
You skipped Markowitz and went to.
You put Vincenzo with this one.
Yeah, just
Yeah, I apologize.
change Markowitz to. Yeah, there you go.
All right, Legislator Obra.
Abstain.
Legislator Pershandaro.
Abstain. Abstain.
Legislator Rosario,
Yay.
Legislator Serbu,
Abstain.
Legislator Van Patten, Legislator Wiegand, Legislator Wolf, Legislator Lehman Pace,
Nay.
Legislator Maku.
Nay.
All right, with that, the vote has failed. Will someone please grab LJ from the hallway? I apologize, LJ, you have not been approved for Director of Internal Affairs. Moving on to the agenda, we have the approval of Hallie Ludwig as SAFB Chair. This is presented by President Johnson. President Johnson, you have the floor.
So for this one, I've been hit with a very fun doozy. Our previous chair, Agrawala, has resigned to pursue an internship, which will pay her more than SAFB will. And we've opted to proceed with the most qualified person of whom she planned to hire to take on the position of chair. Ms. Ludwig was a candidate when we were originally hiring for the chairperson position and had been selected by Chair Agrawala to serve as the director of audits, but we felt that it would be more important to have a new chair take on as opposed to, and plus we need a chair if we're going to select an SAFB board. So we've asked if she'd be willing to step into the role of chair, which she has agreed to. Now, I could go through the process of, opening up the applications and going through that entire process again, but I have a feeling that I'm going to end up coming back to her being the candidate that I'm stuck with hiring. Not stuck with her, that I end up hiring anyway. So to avoid having to go through that rigmarole, I will yield the floor to her and let her talk with you all.
All right, Hallie, you have the floor.
Hello, for those of you I haven't met, I'm Hallie. I used to work with SAFB as the director of accounting for 1 year before I myself got an internship. While I was at that internship, I still came to student congress meetings because making sure that knowing what's going on in student congress, the student body, and the student orgs is very important to me. I really liked working with SAFB and with all of you in student congress. It was very fun. Everybody here is fun to talk with. My qualifications is that I used to work with SAFB, as I mentioned earlier, and for approximately 3 years, I was president of the Costume and Cosplay Club. I had to order things, make decisions, and make sure everything went smoothly between the Cosplay Club and SAFB. And then once I was at SAFB, I had to make sure that all of our things still went smoothly. For SAFB, I would order items like you guys do for events. I had to help making certain decisions with how budgets were approved. I helped with, well, all of us helped with with the bylaws of SAFB. And I would love to be chair. Is there any questions for me?
Are there any questions for Hallie at this time? Legislator Prashandaro.
Just an experience question. What so far has been like your most challenging experience within SAFB? How did you handle that?
There's been some challenges through SAFB when there were requests that we didn't necessarily want to deny, but we couldn't approve. So it was hard to determine how either we were going to break the news or if we were going to, like what other options the clubs had. For example, sometimes clubs would order too much of something or an item would be above the limit. And so we would have to determine, well, we'd have to tell them that we couldn't do that. And then we would also offer different options. So maybe their cups were too expensive and I would find other cups. And then I would send them to, I sent them to our chair Gio at the time. And then she as chair would send it to other people to help them get their things, because it's not fun denying people their money.
Legislator Snell.
Now, prospective Ludwig, I know that you were with SAFB previously, more specifically when the topic of reform versus detachment came up. I know you felt very strongly about that. Having now seen that coming up, reform was chosen. Do you feel that in good faith you can stick with that reform, or do you still stand by the opinion that reform at this time is not plausible? It's not, for lack of better terms, the best time or the best fit for what the situation is. Also, sorry, follow-up question. I know we were talking a bit earlier about the Grizzorg's shift to, I believe it's my sale. With that, do you have a plan to handle that at SAFB?
I'm gonna start with the MySell question. There are already things in place with the MySale that I don't have all of the information about yet because I'm not chair currently. But I will be willing to work with organizations and OSI and Student Congress if necessary for what needs to happen for the change once I have all the information with me. As for the reform versus separation, I think that there are things between SAFB and Student Congress that should be changed to make the flow better. I like the reform. There's a couple things that I might want to ask more clarifying questions about. But since SAFB is doing a lot of things right now, I think reform is good right now before maybe going for a deeper separation later if issues can't be solved. But I think that a lot of our problems could be solved in other ways than separation, and separation might be a last resort or something like that.
Legislator Wolf.
Seeing how there's a common recurrent issue of approvals not quite, I mean, applicants, what do they call? Budget requests. So a lot of things weren't quite right with them, and considering that we're shifting to an entire new software suite to get that done in terms of my sale, how much time in your previous time at SFB did you spend in direct communications with students? And do you think that your time communicating with students has prepared you to, lead students through these massive shifts and changes in applications and requests?
I do think that my time at SAFB has prepared me for being able to talk directly with students about these requests. Most of my job as director of accounting, I didn't always speak directly to students because that is the chair's job. But a lot of the times we would all work together to find a solution before sending it to students anyway. The only difference is that now I would be the one telling them that decision, which I have no problem doing.
Legislator Layman Pace.
Obviously, with your experience on SAFB, you have experience. I'm guessing that you have experience consulting about hiring board members. With that being said, I'm wondering if, and if the answer is no, it's fine. I'm just let's plan ahead. Do you have any ideas of people who you potentially want to fill out your board, or I guess how, if you don't have people in mind now, how are you going to make sure you get the word out and we've got qualified candidates?
Divya was doing all of that before I was hired, and she has chosen multiple very qualified applicants. I will be talking to them in the upcoming weeks just to make sure that there's no concerns I have. But I don't doubt Divya's what's the word? judgment. So hopefully I won't be having to look through people. There's only one person who has not been completely decided yet. And so I will have to look through to see if there's any applicants that Divya was looking at, and then either determine from there or start the process.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Are there any other questions for Hallie at this time? All right, seeing none, Hallie, I'm gonna ask you to leave the room so we can enter discussion. All right, Chairperson Waters.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that the prospective Ludwig's response to the reform or separation question was basically exactly what I was pushing for when that original thing came up. I'm very happy to hear that answer. And also, like, just generally, like, prospective Ludwig is a very qualified candidate, having served as chair of accounting? Yeah, thank you. And I think that there's no outstanding issues. I think that I will be voting yes, and yeah, I think that is the point.
Chairperson LaBelle.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to be very happy to vote yay on this approval. I would be very happy to see Hallie as the new SAFB chair. I'm very happy to see that Hallie is going up for approval today, because originally that was not the case. And I'm very happy to see that has been sorted, and happy to finally have an SAFB chair here and ready to stay and work. With that, I yield.
Legislator Wolf.
In my time around prospective Ludwig, professionally, I the one thing that comes immediately to mind is that Hallie is like no damsel in distress. She does not shy away from fixing things and fixing them effectively and competently. She's incredibly communicative, well-spoken, concise. I think that is something that's definitely needed in handling such a volume of, requests and errors in the requests. Additionally, I witnessed her work at SFB, and she really did get through her work very methodically and very quickly. She's definitely not one to fall behind on stuff. And I really see her as an incredibly excellent candidate, like 1 in a million, a unicorn, really. So I fully endorse her. She's excellent.
Are there any other points of discussion at this time? Seeing none, we'll be moving into a roll call vote. Chairperson LaBelle.
Yay.
Chairperson Waters.
Yes.
Legislator Fiatizet.
Yeah.
Legislator Snell.
Yay.
Chairperson Valdez.
Yay.
Parliamentarian Bella.
Yay.
Legislator Barris. Legislator Dreswicki. Legislator Aveza.
Yay.
Legislator Lehman Pace.
Yay.
Legislator Maku.
Yay.
Legislator Markowitz.
Yay.
Legislator Martino. Legislator Obra.
Yay.
Legislator Pershandaro.
Yay.
Legislator Rosario.
Yay.
Legislator Sherbu.
Yay.
Legislator Van Patten.
Yay.
Legislator Wiegand.
Yay.
Legislator Wolf.
Yay.
All right, with that, Hallie has been approved for SAP chair. Will someone please grab her from the hallway? Congratulations, Chairperson Ludwig. You have been approved for SAP chair. All right, moving on to the agenda, we have CB 6802. This is presented by Speaker DeVore. Speaker DeVore, you have the floor. Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. All right. So right here, this is a different CB 6802 that probably some of y'all saw this morning. I gave the wrong file to Chairperson Valdez. I apologize. But this bill right here is to establish guidelines for a steering committee. Basically just that they would publish, like, this is some stuff that, like, this is how we submit legislation. This is how you put it up on the agenda. Basically just outlining how they put agendas together for the future. So if I read through the enacted, it had subsection C under 6C.1, which shall read, submit guidelines the chair intends to follow for the duration of their tenure to the general body. Guidelines shall include, but are not limited to, timeline for submission of legislation, timeline to publish the agenda, and limits on legislation to be placed on the agenda.
Point of order, is the chair allowed to present bills? Would parliamentarian Bella know that?
Let me see about that. I'd assume that the duties would just be relinquished to somebody else. If Marcus or Nia are there, they could just take over.
Point of order first, Chairperson Bell.
So it is not uncommon for the chair of our meeting specifically to present legislation. This has been a common practice for as long as I've been a member of Student Congress, especially with VP Maris and then VP Brummer before, after her. Of course, it's normally the vice president who chairs these meetings, but this is a very normal thing. With that, I yield.
Legislator Layman Pace.
I was going to say, worst case, we could probably do some kind of suspension of the rules, because I know that there's provisions for that where it's like we can just do something to flow debate easier. So if it's a concern, I would raise it.
Would someone be willing to make that motion? Chairperson LaBelle.
I motion to suspend the rules for whatever rule this may be.
Motion to suspend the rules raised by Chairperson LaBelle. Is there a second to the motion? Second. Seconded by Legislator Layman Pace. Speaker DeVore, you may resume the floor. Oh, thank you.
Wow.
All right. So going back to it, just basically going over what the guidelines do. It's just timeline to submit legislation, publish the agenda, limits on how many pieces of legislation we can have on the agenda. Adding a paragraph below that, which would read, the steering chair may not outright refuse to put these items on the agenda so long as they follow their guidelines that they publish. That's what that's referencing to. However, they reserve the right to delay agenda items according to the published guidelines. Last part is a line under that again, which is the steering chair, upon receiving an agenda item, must put it on the agenda for the next general body meeting unless requested otherwise by the submitter, so long as the agenda item is submitted according to the timeline outlined in the steering guidelines. That's about it. It's just letting Carolina or whoever the future steering chair is just outline this is how we submit legislation. Is there any discussion on this bill at this time? Seeing none, we'll be moving.
Try to raise my hand, but I don't think
Okay, I apologize. Legislator Maku.
I was just gonna say, part 2, I think it is, might be a bit redundant because I think that part is basically articulated in Appendix 1 already. I'll just read off the part I'm looking at right now under the steering committee. Let me find it again. It says that the steering committee may not determine whether proposed business should be on an agenda if all of the following apply. It says the order of business does not contravene the policies of the university's student congress. So it just seems to me that it's already outlined in the bylaws. So that's all I wanted to say.
All right, yeah, so the second part of that line was more the focus of it was just they are allowed to delay agenda items. They're not able to refuse it. It's just basically giving them the ability to delay them according to their guidelines, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks for
Chairperson
clarifying.
I believe we had talked about this before because I've been suggesting whenever you read these bills out to me when we're in the office. I know this is only the first reading, so this doesn't have to be voted on until next week, and we don't have to worry about it that much, and it's not that deep. Were you going to add a provision for that line to essentially specify how long they can delay this? Or is, because like, of course, that raises the ethical question, can they just indefinitely delay it as long as they want? Or am I missing something? I might just be reading it wrong. I also can't see that far.
Yeah, that's what line 3 is intended to say. It's like upon receiving the agenda item, they must put it up on the agenda the next GBM as long as it's submitted according to their timeline listed in their guidelines.
You're right. I remember helping you write that. With that I yield. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other points of discussion on CB 6802 at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll be moving on. Next up on the agenda is CB 6803. Is presented by Chairperson LaBelle. Chairperson LaBelle, you have the floor.
Thank you, thank you. So the context of this bill isn't going to make much sense, so I'm going to explain it to you guys. This is a bill I made today, after this agenda was sent out. Essentially, during the last legislative leadership meeting, the question was proposed, why do we continuously approve members for each committee? Is that in the bylaws? The answer is no. And so it was filed as a judicial inquiry, so the Judiciary Committee could further look at it and just be like, okay, what's the deal here? What do we think? And last night at our meeting that started at 8:30 p.m., we looked at the bylaws, we looked at the Constitution, what is mentioned where and why, and decided that unless specifically mentioned in the bylaws, a committee does not need legislative approval to add members. The exceptions to this are, at the moment, to my knowledge, there might be more committees, but I'm pretty sure there isn't. The Judiciary Committee, which requires approval, the Congressional Court, which requires approval, and the Elections Committees, which require approval. So essentially, what this is doing is not like enshrining this or making the decision on that. That decision was made yesterday. This is clarifying it in the bylaws so we can then just go forward and like ensure people in the future don't get confused about it, and to make everyone's lives easier in the future. I will be giving the actual report on that decision later on in the meeting. With that, I yield.
Are there any points of discussion on CB 6803 at this time? Chairperson Waters.
Thank you. I just wanted to just say a little bit, just like, if it's not in the bylaws and the Judiciary Committee has gone over it, I see no reason to challenge it. I see that as me being a legislative chair with a committee that would not be need to be approved anymore, it would make my life a little bit easier, but not like an extraordinary amount easier. But like, I do think if the Judiciary Committee has gone through it, it's not in the bylaws, there's no harm in, especially for committees like mine, the community support, where it's not really like we're dealing with anything that's like possibly unconstitutional unless something's really going whack. I see no issue with this, and I will be supporting it.
Yep, Chairperson LaBelle.
Okay, so I just wanted to further state that if anybody doesn't like this bill over the basis they don't like the decision, I will inform you that this is not what the bill is. The bill is to simply clarify it in the bylaws. If you vote against it at the next GBM, you're voting against clarifying it in the bylaws. The decision's already made. You can't really change that unless you appeal the decision. With that, I yield.
Legislator Wiegand.
So, just to clarify, like if I wanted to join a committee, like let's say the steering committee, I wouldn't need to be voted on by the legislature, right?
Yep, you just talk to Chairperson Valdez in that case, and she'll just say, "Yep, sure, you're on the committee." Oh, wave of a finger.
Okay, so it's way easier now. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other points of discussion on CB 6803? Seeing none, we'll be moving on the agenda. Next up on the agenda is CR 6802. This is presented by Legislator Snell. Legislator Snell, you have the floor.
Hello, so this resolution was written actually right after I got voted into Congress. It's one that I'm very passionate about. At the bottom there, you would notice there's a link that goes to the promotional poster that kind of just explains it all in layman's terms. But essentially, I want this to be resolved that State Congress will work with the maintenance department to ensure that all accessibility aids are in working quality order and properly maintained, as well as work with both as well as the marketing committee specifically will be working with both DSS and maintenance to help create posters that can go inside of buildings or near accessibility aids to both contact maintenance as well as possibly even give people directions to get to those aids, as well as to help create signs that can go up when those aids are out of order, as order just to get them more emphasized to the public, since people depend on them to get around for many reasons. And as such, I've noticed that it's just something I've noticed, as well as speaking to people in the community, that, yeah, it's a big issue. With that, I yield to questions.
All right, any questions on CR 6802 at this time? Legislator Freyatete.
I wanted to see if I could be added as a co-sponsor.
Co-sponsor?
Or supporter, sorry.
Legislator Snell, would you mind giving me editing access so I may add people on as supporters?
Mm-hmm. You are an editor already.
OUSC, ask her to go
Oh, yeah, make sure it's the OUSC account.
Oh. There you go. You should have got it.
All right, thank you. Would anybody else like to be added as a supporter at this time?
You can just throw me on last.
Okay.
Let the record reflect everyone but legislative accountants raising their hand.
Oh. Anybody I'm missing adding to as a supporter?
You can throw me at the wall.
All right, are there any other points of discussion on CR 6802 at this time? Seeing none, will, oh, sorry, legislator Wiegand. May I ask you to repeat that closer to the microphone?
Sorry. In the resolution, under whereas it says disabled students on campus are unfairly targeted due to their, and then it just doesn't say anything else.
Legislator Snell.
Apologies. Where does it say that?
At the bottom in the whereas, the
There
last
it is.
one.
Apologies. That was for a different bill that I was working on. And
Thank you.
All right, are there any other points of discussion at this time?
oh, that's misspelled.
Legislator Wolf.
This should be removed.
I was wondering if Legislator Snell or any other, anyone else can speak upon this about, I don't know necessarily the chain of command, for the maintenance department, like if necessary, Oakland University Student Congress, can we communicate with them? Is that on our list? And also like, I'd love to see, this be sponsored by the Disability Support Center. And also, perhaps we should get in touch with the rep for the maintenance worker union, if that would be advisable. I'm just concerned about like, we're calling upon to work with the maintenance department and I'm not sure exactly like, who they like report to and, how much like oversight we can have in that. That is all.
Legislator Snell.
With that, I'm not quite sure about the maintenance department specifically. I do know that a lot of, specifically when it comes to accessibility aids, disability support services does, they receive reports about that because students will go to them first just because that's their point of contact. As such, I also know that it's not unheard of for maintenance to just be contacted by the student body as a whole, just for little issues within housing. And I know that as it stands now, it's not unheard of for them to get reports from students. I know also in various offices across campus, this is something I talked about with other offices last term, it's very difficult for them to get those reports because they'll just report it to different people within disability support services and the line of communication gets blurred a lot because things will just not get done or they're not outside the purview. As such, I was hoping to kind of get that direct contact. However, if you feel that there is a better way to do this, then please let me know and speak up now because I'm open to amending the bill. In terms of acknowledging disability support services, they have signed on as a supporter of the bill. They were actually the first supporter I got on the bill, or they should have been among the first that I got on the bill.
Legislator Prashandaro.
I have a small grammatical thing. In the third whereas, student congress is treated as plural, but I think it should be recognizes and seeks, because in the other whereases, it's treated as singular. Sorry.
This is the grammatical error, a friendly amendment to the resolution, Legislator Snell.
Refresh it, it got fixed.
All right, Chairperson LaBelle.
I would like to say, I'm gonna vote yay on this resolution. I have a lot of experience with writing resolutions and communicating with proper departments to solve or at least communicate, with people about certain issues. And, I mean, we, of course, I believe Legislator Snell is going to take note of all of these suggestions and, things we have here today, but with the passage of this resolution as is, I believe it's fine. I like it a lot. And I can't wait to see this enacted.
Legislator Fiatete.
Yeah, I also want to voice my support for this bill as I feel that it can help a lot of students on our campus. I would like to see how it will be enacted, but I will be voting yay on this resolution.
Okay, are there any other points of discussion on CR 6802 at this time? Seeing none, we'll be moving into a roll call vote. Starting with Chairperson LaBelle.
Yay.
Chairperson Waters.
Yay.
Legislator Fiat-Tet.
Yay.
Legislator Snell.
Yay.
Chairperson Valdez.
Yay.
Parliamentarian Bella.
Yay.
Legislator Barris.
Yay.
Legislator Dreswicki.
Yay.
Legislator Aveza.
Yay.
Legislator Lehman Pace.
Yay.
Legislator Maku.
Yay.
Legislator Markowitz.
Yay.
Legislator Martino. I believe as a point of personal privilege. Legislator Obra.
Yay.
Legislator Prashandaro.
Yay.
Legislator Rosario.
Yay.
Legislator Serbu.
Yay.
Legislator Van Patten.
Yay.
Legislator Wiegand.
Yay.
Legislator Wolf.
Yay.
All right. And with that, CR 6802 has passed. Point of order, Chairperson LaBelle.
Am I mistaken in thinking that is not O2? Isn't it like 04 or something? Because I know I have passed 2 resolutions in this term alone.
For that, again, sorry, just hopping in here. I wrote this very early on. When I wrote it, it was in fact CR 6802. I also made the infographic. I see a couple people hopped on to see it that also said CR 6802. In the bill itself, I believe it should be up to date now with CR 6808, I want to say. I'm not quite positive, but you guys have access. If it's not, feel free to fix it.
Okay, yeah, it's just the title of the doc. Thank you for clarifying. I was just a little confused for a second.
All right, so for correction, we have now passed CR 6808. Moving on the agenda, we'll be moving on into discussion. Is there any points of discussion at this time? Seeing none, we'll be moving on into legislative updates. First up is Speaker of the Legislature, Speaker DeVore. Speaker DeVore, you have the floor. Oh, thanks once again, Madam Chair. Okay. I was told by a couple people, like including Legislator Markowitz, to remind people of just how you're supposed to get people to support your bill. So a good way to do this is putting it up on Slack, on Discord, whatever, just to get people's public opinion of your bill before you put it up on the agenda. It doesn't, not required, but it does help us save a little time, as you saw, Legislator Snell just put up that resolution, every single person raised their hand. Please don't make me have to sit and type everybody's names. While I like all of your names and stuff, they're all very beautiful, but I don't want to type them. All right, as for me, my personal updates, I've started doing legislative one-on-ones with all of you. I have about halfway done on at least scheduling them. I've already had the first like 3 or 4 of them. I believe I emailed all of you a when to meet a while ago about trying to schedule them. I can re-email that out to all of you. I will ask all of you to fill it out just so we can get those one-on-ones scheduled. They're just so we can like brainstorm initiatives and get you guys all situated to start on working student Congress wise over the summer. I plan on having these once a semester just to continue working with y'all, because while I like my ideas, I think they're good. Y'all have better ideas, and there's 28 of you. I want to hear some of them. 27 other ones, whatever. Forgetting I have something else, but oh yes, I am also starting legislative leadership meetings with all of the chair people that have been elected. So come to the, actually, now I definitely remember what I was going to talk about next. Come to the legislator meeting / task forces next Wednesday, same time as GBM, in I believe Lake Huron room, where I'll present some of the stuff and ideas that we've had during our legislative leadership meetings, along with task forces led by President Johnson and Vice President Matthews. So definitely come to that. Technically you're required. Yes, you are required. And with that, I don't have anything else. I'll move on to updates related to legislative leadership now. First up, Chairperson LaBelle.
Thank you. As I said earlier, I have a couple of judicial reports regarding decisions that were made at now 2 Judiciary Committee meetings we've made. Not made. First off, I'm going to read off our report regarding the OUSC election timeline inquiry that was filed to us. Thank you, Legislator Barris, for writing this for me, because I had to write the other two. I didn't want to write this one. Okay. So on June 4th, the committee met. We reviewed and voted on an inquiry that was submitted on May 7th, which inquired about the shortcomings of the current OUSC election timeline, which has remained inconsistent since the COVID-19 pandemic. The committee discussed logistics, terminology, and proposed changes to alter the bylaws to align to alter and enforce the bylaws to align with the Constitution. The primary issue before the committee was whether to uphold and enforce the established OUSC election timeline in the Constitution. The committee unanimously voted yes to uphold and enforce the elections process outlined in our Constitution, highlighting the importance of following our Constitution and bylaws and facilitating a smooth transition to the next administration. To clarify for everyone, this was an issue that was raised and talked about in the Congressional Records Committee last year. We noticed we don't follow our elections timeline like how it's supposed to be followed at all, and we haven't in recent memory. Just as an example, this term began on May 1st. We had a couple weeks of transition, nobody working, that sort of stuff. That's not what we're supposed to do. In our Constitution, it says that we're supposed to have 2 meetings of the new administration before the end of the respective winter semester. And we're supposed to have our elections a little bit earlier so we can actually facilitate that. That's what the Constitution says. In the Congressional Records Committee, when we were going through and making those changes last year, seeing what should be changed and what not, we debated on whether or not we wanted to change that section to go with our current process or go back to following precedent and go back to following what our Constitution says, and we chose to go back to what our Constitution says. So essentially, what this inquiry was to acknowledge that and enforce that. This is essentially the committee saying, hey, this is in the Constitution. We need to follow that now. That is a categorically President Johnson problem in a months down the line.
Isn't it always?
So let me see if there's anything else. Yes, I summed up the reasoning for that in layman's terms. If you'd like access to this report so you can see the reasoning for this in much more eloquent terms, feel free to ask me. I will give you the digital copy, or I'll hand you this physical copy right here. I don't want it after this meeting. Recycling. All right. Actually, does anyone have any questions about that first report? Wonderful, lovely. If anybody wants me to clarify anything about any of these reports, just let me know, either during or after the meeting. So the second one was regarding ad hoc committee guidelines. On June 4th, the same meeting, we reviewed and voted on an inquiry that was submitted to the judiciary on May 5th, which inquired about whether or not the president had the power to create universal guidelines for ad hoc committees that apply to all ad hoc committees, and inquired on whether or not the president and by proxy members of the executive branch had the ability to create ad hoc committees. The first question debated on and the first question that was debated and voted on. Wow, I can't speak. Can the president sponsor legislation that creates ad hoc committees? And of course, by proxy, that does mean executive board members. I just didn't write that down. The judiciary voted 4 against the president being able to and 1 in favor. The reasoning is the bylaws and constitution say very, very little about presidential authority regarding submitting legislation. And in the bylaws specifically, it lists creating ad hoc committees as an enumerated legislative power, and implying that it's meant to just be a power of the legislature. Apologies, I'm seeing if I'm missing anything. Yes, the judiciary agreed that the president does not have the authority to sponsor legislation that creates ad hoc committees, and of course, that applies to other executive board members as well. The second question I was debated on for this inquiry was, can the president and other executive board members create universal guidelines that apply to all ad hoc committees? The judiciary voted 3 against that and 2 in favor. The reasoning is as follows. The bylaws say that the University Student Congress and the persons who created these ad hoc committees have to file guidelines to the general body meeting within 4 general body meetings of its creation, which I know how to deal with because I just passed the ad hoc committee, which is taken to imply that these guidelines are on a case-by-case basis with committees. So one set of guidelines for one committee, another set of guidelines for another committee. So the ability to create a universal set of guidelines for all committees is kind of not, it's not, what's the word I'm trying to think of? It's not, yes, appropriate. And so that was that decision. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns at this time for me to address? All right. Also, I probably should have stated this, just for those that don't know, me, the judiciary chair, is not a voting member on this committee. I simply facilitate conversation and bring in and kind of try and facilitate the dialogue when I can with what I know, which is why I'm so heavy on trying to know precedent from a million years ago and trying to figure out all the implications of everything so I can better facilitate this conversation between my committee members who do vote on these things. All right, so our last report was it was for a special meeting yesterday. We had at 8:30 p.m., which we already looked at a bill related to. So on June 11th, the Judiciary Committee reviewed and voted on an inquiry that was submitted to the Judiciary on June 7th, which inquired on whether or not we as a Congress need legislative approval for certain committees to add members. The question was reviewed and voted on as follows. The chairpersons do not need legislative approval to add members to their committee, exceptions being committees that require to get approval as per their bylaws. The Judiciary voted technically unanimously in favor of committees not needing that approval, but we did have one member absent, so essentially and abstain. The reasoning I already elaborated on a little bit earlier. The bylaws state specifically for which committees need approval, so that kind of implies that other committees don't. But we have been operating in the past couple of years that those committees do, and that's just not the case. So for example, if you are the Judiciary Committee, like I am, you still have to garner approval. Our bylaws specifically would say that members for that committee have to get approval. Same thing goes for the Congressional Court and the Elections Committees. Every other committee, to my knowledge, does not require approval, whether that be an executive committee or a legislative committee. Let me see if I'm missing anything in this decision here. Yes, a part of the inquiry was asking to modify Appendix 1 to state the change if it, or to clarify whatever the decision was. So that's what that bill earlier was. It's going to clarify and ensure people in the future aren't confused, because it's a very common issue with our bylaws. They're very confusing and they're very long for no reason. Well, for some reason, but not any good. With that, is there any questions, comments, concerns regarding this last report? Lovely. Okay. Well, on to what I have been doing as the chair and as a legislator. I have been working on a couple different things. First of all, getting these inquiries handled, because I complained about it a lot when I first became chair. There was a lot of things filed. There's a lot of things we could look at. The judiciary is working on it, where we still have 2 more inquiries to get through. But those are more long-standing ones, so we're not going to see that probably anytime soon. And focusing on Appendix 3 reform, really just kind of reading through that several times, getting the feel of what's what before the judiciary looks at it and makes notable changes or proposes notable changes. And I've been doing a fair amount of orientation tabling as per usual. I do that a lot. And I have written up a piece of legislation to ban generative AI use for Congress. It's It's been written for about 2 weeks now. I am still making some changes to it to make it as good as it can be. So it's not unfinished when it goes up in front of you guys. If anyone is interested in seeing it, contributing to it, supporting it, let me know. I can send it over to you. We can talk about it. All the works. With that, I yield the floor. Finally.
All right, are there any other updates related to legislative leadership? Chairperson Waters.
All right, I'm gonna be a little bit shorter. So basically, with the fact that with the judiciary chair is finding, that means that my committee is now formed. If you are still interested, let me know. I'd love to have you on because I don't have a limit to how many people I can have. With that, I had a meeting with a few of my committee members. We have started brainstorming and we have more stuff coming up. I mean, yeah, that's about it. I mean, I thought I would have more, honestly. But yeah, if you're interested, let me know, especially if you are a commuter. With that,
Chairperson Valdez.
Hi everyone. So far I have a few people interested in the steering committee and now I can work with them. So now that we have gone through a lot of the things we had to go through, and that now that next time, like next meeting, we're gonna have a few bills to vote on. Everyone can send me their stuff now. We have more space now, and now that approvals can be now like more flexible and stuff, then I can just put more stuff or more bills and resolutions from anyone. So thank you so much for your patience and for being so nice during these weeks that have been so hectic. But yeah, that's about it. With that, I yield the floor.
Be greedy and take up a little bit more floor time because I forgot to mention something. So Research Review Committee is also something I am in charge of running. Whatever, Chairperson LaBelle. So yeah, Research Review Committee is something I'm in charge of running. We've already got our first research request submitted by President Johnson, reflecting a mental health day policy that him and the provost are currently working on. So that's something we'll be working on over the coming weeks. We have our first meeting, I believe, on Monday, I believe is what I told them. But if you're interested in that committee, we work with a lot of like research requests like that. We work with the perspective process and how we're amending that. Like you said, bring it up at the legislative meeting coming up. But yeah, if anybody's interested in that committee, we already got 3 people going up for it. But if anybody else is interested, let me know. Any other updates related to legislative leadership at this time? Seeing none. Any updates related to legislative projects and initiatives? Also seeing none. Any questions related to legislative reports? Seeing none, we're going to the liaison report. Are there any liaisons that would like to give their report at this time? Legislator Oprah.
Hello, I am speaking on behalf of Sage. It's Pride Month, and with that, we will be tabling a couple prides, specifically Fenton Pride, Saturday, June 21st, 2 to 7, Berkeley, Sunday, June 22nd, 1 to 5, and maybe Rochester Pride, Saturday, June 21st, 12 to 4. If you're interested in just coming around having fun or maybe helping us table, these can be found on our link tree. Pride over you. I don't know if you're interested in helping. Reach out to me or Claire. That's all.
Are there any other liaisons that would like to give their report at this time? Seeing none, I'll move on to executive reports. Starting off, student body president Marcus Johnson. Marcus Johnson, you have the floor.
Greetings. What else do I have today? I did meet with the provost, in which I was able to present to her the resolution we passed at the meeting prior to said meeting. She actually wants to pursue the midterm grade policy applicable to all undergraduate classes, but thanks us for giving her the leeway of sticking with 1 to 2,000 level courses. She did say her intention before she makes it a mandated policy is to talk with professors and ask them to implement the policy, just to see how many are actually willing to do so, and then go from there. I did meet with the folks from the University Senate as well. As most of you know, we as Congress members do get to serve on Senate committees. So I've talked with Speaker DeVore, and we're going to send out a form so that if you find one that you'd like to serve on, which will meet your committee requirement, we can get you set up with it. Now, the difference between these types of committees and Congress committees is that you're not allowed to be paid for participation in these committees. But you are voting members, so you do count toward quorum in these committees. So if you cannot make it to them or the meetings, let me know as soon as possible so that we can put you on one that's a better fit. Because if you don't show up to those meetings, it not only screws with the committee's ability to operate, but then they feel enticed to restrict the amount of student presence that is on these committees, and we don't want that to be the case. So, once you've selected whichever committee it is you'd like to join, and once we've got you placed, the chairperson will reach out to you. They typically start meeting in like September-ish, so we've got some time, but I want to make sure we get those placements done as soon as possible. I will also welcome our new Board of Trustees liaison, Matt Seidel. He's just joined us today, so we extend to him our deepest congratulations. What else did I want to bring up really quickly? I will also mention, I mentioned this a while ago. Totally forgot I was going to do it, but I will do it now. A while ago, I mentioned that I wanted to create an OUSC Spotify playlist. I'm now going to do that. Totally forgot that I said I was going to do it. I will do it now. At some point in life, you will be bugged to, I don't know, add a song or two of your choice. Let's get a vibe for everyone's music tastes and whatnot. In terms of anything else I have to report, I believe that is all. I don't have too much going on, so if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
All right, moving on to our next report from Student Body Vice President Nia Matthews. VP Matthews, you have the floor.
Hi, so I don't have a lot of updates. I did meet with, like I said, Marcus with all those meetings. We also met with the Native American what was it, liaison, or I think her name's Beth, and we were able to.
The Native American Advisory Council. Yes.
Yeah, and we were able to get some updates on them and their projects and ways they can become more involved in student Congress. I also met with the graduate council leaders and to talk about ways that the graduate students can become more involved in student Congress, as well as keeping SAFB afloat with Divya, training Divya, and our new forms will be live on this Sunday. So that's kind of exciting, and we're making really good progress with our new forms. We were kind of in a rock and a hard place a couple weeks ago, but I think we've kind of gotten over those hurdles and obstacles. And that's it.
Okay, moving on. Are there any updates related to e-board projects and initiatives at this time? Seeing none, are there any questions related to executive reports? Legislator Lehman Pace.
Sorry, I was ready to just move through the room. Do we have any, I know you had mentioned, first I did want to say, I'm excited to hear that we're working more with the grad council. I know the dean of the grad school, Brandy, had been really wanting to work with Student Congress more. But I was wondering if there was any updates on pursuing some of the effects of the resolution we passed last term about keeping ICE off campus, especially in regards to recent events such as the abduction of a Detroit high schooler, the repeated raids on high schools and college campuses. I guess I was wondering if we made any progress on like figuring out who to talk to keep ICE out of here.
I can cover that one. So we did actually mention the ICE resolution to the provost. So she is aware that it is something that we are pursuing. As far as, where to take that to get the university to go forward with that, I would probably think it'd be the University Senate, and we know how things go there. Because I also brought up to her the DEI resolution that we passed and the issues we were having with it. And she said the biggest struggle Oakland University has as a whole is that people may think one thing, but the moment they say the thing that they are thinking, the university, out of random, becomes a target of the federal government, which is probably why so many people in the university senate are, I don't want to say afraid, I will say afraid of things like that, because they're concerned that we will make ourselves into a target or give the federal government a reason to look at us. As of now, we've benefited that all of their attention has been focused on Harvard. I will not comment as to my speculations on that, but that was something we addressed as well. The provost mentioned that a friend of hers is a chancellor at a university in North Carolina, and there was a law passed that required her to change the labelings of all the bathrooms throughout their university from men and women to biological male and biological female. She decided to just quietly not do that. And apparently someone FOIA'd that information and reported her to the Department of Education, which then started the feds breathing down her neck. Now, luckily, we live in Michigan, where that, for the foreseeable future, will not be a problem. But their concern is that the moment we start yelling, when they weren't looking at us, they will start looking at us. And we do not want them to start looking at us. That does not mean I do not intend to continue to pursue the resolution. I'd like that point to be made. I intend to continue pursuing it. I'm just letting you know what she told me is probably the reason why a lot of folks on the Senate are so hesitant toward it, which I can respect. I can respect their reasoning for doing so. But yes, to answer the question I was originally asked, I did mention to her about the ICE resolution, and I can talk with her to see if she knows how we could move forward with something like that. But any avenue I see us taking, I feel would just inevitably get us before the Senate. And like I said, we all know how those types of things go. I will yield the floor now.
Legislator Layman Pace.
I was going to say just maybe one suggestion is perhaps we could include the police department in these meetings, just so they know that this is something being talked about, so there could be some sort of informal agreement, you know, not something with an email chain or with anything that can be FOIA, but a standing, we're not gonna help out with that.
I will say, as far as protocol goes, I do not directly contact the chief of the police department, but I do think it is a conversation that could be had with him, yes.
Are there any other questions related to executive reports at this time? Seeing none.
Wait.
Never mind, President Johnson.
Also, I have sent the Dean of Students the resolution we passed about preferred names in external communications. I'm waiting to hear from him on whether or not he's heard back from the information tech people at the university, because I mentioned to him that we passed it, and he wanted to see it, so that it would work in conjunction with the other thing I had already brought up to him. So I wanted to update you that that information is being run up the food chain. I just don't know where it's gonna stop, and when it comes back, what it's gonna look like. So just giving you an update on that. Now I'm done.
Chairperson LaBelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that because I've said this is the third time I've passed that now. And right now, of course, it's just kind of like a kick in the butt, just being like, hey, administration, keep doing what you're doing, keep trying to minimize this. And the Dean of Students knowing that this is still an important thing to us, 2 terms later is very important to me. So thank you.
Are there any other questions related to executive reports at this time? Seeing none. All right, moving on to the executive report of the OUSC advisor, Gina Ann Miller. Advisor Miller, you have the floor.
two things, please. One is sitting in our office for the last couple of weeks, maybe months, are donations that were supposed to be donated to the flood victims in Detroit. And so I would like to make sure that that's a follow through, that those items get to where they need to be. The other thing is this next week is a big event happening, and that is Grizzorgs is going from the platform that it had originally been for many, many, many years, the third-party platform, to my sale. The date now is June 18th, where the transition will be made. And so I hope that you will all check it out. You're all part of it. And we want to make sure it is as seamless as possible, including all the forms that are now Google Forms. And, Vice President Matthews has been working very diligently with Dana in the OSI to also create the forms for SAP. That form is now going.
Don't.
It's interfering with that speaker above you.
Okay, that form is now going to be a Google form, and hopefully that they will also be up and running by the 18th. So please check it out, and please support us in making this happen and getting words out to your peers. Thank you.
Are there any comments from the gallery at this time? Seeing none, are there any announcements to be made at this time? Also seeing none, I will adjourn this meeting at 7:08 p.m.